Hello and welcome to the PPW pod, bringing you news, views, and interviews from the world of real estate marketplaces and PropTech. My name is Edmund Keith. I'm the editor of OnlineMarketplaces.com, and I'm joined today by Simon Baker, and we are going to talk all about what continues to be the biggest story in our industry, which is, of course, CoStar and its continued attempt to take over residential real estate advertising. Simon, how are you doing?
I'm doing very well this morning, Ed. Let's jump into this because I think it's a fascinating topic.
So I guess most people listening will know what we're talking about when I say CoStar's attempt to take over residential real estate. But for anybody who's not quite up to speed, what are we talking about here? CoStar, US commercial data giant, commercial real estate data giant, a company worth, I think, something like north of $30 billion market cap. They have moved into residential real estate and they are taking on Zillow with their Homes.com brand, which they bought. Interestingly, Homes.com used to be just another kind of also ran portal. It was kind of, I don't know, fifth or sixth place overall in terms of portals in the US. They took it over in 2021. Since then, they have thrown a lot of money at it and made a lot of noise saying that they're going to take the number one spot from Zillow. Today, we are going to analyze how they're doing on their journey to take over Zillow, or whether it even matters if they overtake Zillow or not.
And don't forget Realtor.com.
Yeah, we're going to be talking about Realtor.com as well. The reason we wanted to kind of come back to this subject, we had spoken about this before on an episode a few months ago with Brian Boero, who is the CEO of 1000 Watt Consulting. Probably one of our best episodes. If you want to go back and check that one out, I recommend doing so. But things have happened since we spoke to Brian, not least of which this week, as we're recording, CoStar released their Q2 results, which includes some quite interesting numbers. Briefly, what we said beforehand was that, and correct me if I'm wrong here, Simon, we weren't convinced that CoStar were going to win. I think Brian said something along the lines of that Homes.com's USP for users, which was, I guess, its extra, data layers and neighborhood guides and all the rest of it, probably wasn't compelling enough. I think that's what Brian said. Yep. I think you have always been quite skeptical about whether Homes.com can really take on Zillow. We're going to reevaluate that today, I think.
Yep. So my underlying thesis is, we can talk about CoStar with Homes.com taking on Zillow, but you've got to take on Realtor.com before Zillow, given Realtor.com is number 2 in the market. And then in the UK, which we're also going to look at a little bit later on, can CoStar with OnTheMarket take on Rightmove? But before you do that, you've got to get in front of Zoopla. Okay, and then we've also got to be mindful of what it is we're talking about. One is you can, maybe beat them with traffic, maybe, but then you've also got to beat them with what's underlying, because you don't run businesses for traffic, you run businesses to make money. And the question is, can you do it at the same level of profitability as some of these much bigger companies in the space? Rightmove versus OnTheMarket, or Zillow versus Homes.com, they're very different beasts when you look at them. So let's jump into this.
Let's jump into it, exactly. We'll start with probably the most controversial talking point on my sheet here, traffic. The latest figures from CoStar, so this is from this week, their Q2 figures are 148 million average unique monthly visitors for the Homes.com network. Of those, 99 million were from Homes.com itself, right? I'm actually going to quote Andy Florence here really quick from his investor call that he did. Our reported Homes.com network traffic of 148 million average monthly unique visitors for the second quarter is fast approaching Zillow's first quarter reported traffic of 217 million.
99 versus 207.
Well, this is the bone of contention, right?
Fast approaching.
This is the bone of contention. So I think, and before I go and quote Andy Florence, I should just point out, if CoStar's lovely communications department are listening to this, we mean no harm. We're just friendly neighborhood commentators. I think he then went on to say something like a better apples to apples comparison is to compare the whole Homes.com network to Zillow. The reason being, Zillow's traffic includes traffic to its multifamily, its commercial, it's all the rest of it, right? So he's saying an apples to apples comparison is the Homes.com network, which includes apartments.com and all the rest of them, is, stacked up against Zillow.com,
Zillow
basically,
brand.
which includes rentals and multifamily and all the rest of it.
Yeah, it's an interesting way of thinking about it. I know if I was in Andy's shoes, I would definitely want to make that argument, because why not, right? You want the gap to be closer. You want your underlying thesis of I can take a business from number 3 to number 1 to be true. However, I think we need to dive behind the numbers a little bit deeper, because headline numbers can always be a little bit misleading.
So I'm going to quote. So that's where he says Homes.com is compared to Zillow. So 148 million compared to 217 million. It's worth pointing out that Realtor.com's latest figures via News Corp's Q4 back in May were 72 million. And I think Redfin's was something like 49 million. So this is all kind of up for debate still. If you look... Sorry, go on.
Let's take Redfin out of the argument, because it's an online brokerage. So that's a different kettle of fish altogether. They're not running a portal to make money from advertising and so on. They're running a portal to get transactions. So let's not compare those ones.
Interestingly, and I know there's no quicker way to make a real estate portal CEO angrier than saying the words similar web traffic. But interestingly, if you look at the similar web traffic, Homes.com is still way behind. It's even way behind Realtor.com. I think if I share my screen, you can see the evolution over time on a graph that I built earlier. But it's what I want to say to you, Simon, is, does any of this matter? Does this PR war of traffic back and forth really matter? So here is the US portal traffic that I've been tracking on SimilarWeb over the years. As you can see down here, Homes.com started off in September 2021 with about 8 million. It went up December 2023, had 47 million. It's actually gone down for June 2024 back to 40 million, right? Whereas Realtor.com is up here. Obviously, this is, caveats galore. Not least of which being similar web traffic is universally hated by real estate portal CEOs.
Of course it is. But the reality about similar web traffic is it uses a similar measuring mechanism across everything. So it is equally inaccurate for everyone, but probably relatively accurate, if that makes sense. And I do think that when you get below the numbers, so let's just take the headline numbers as being accurate, right? Basically 100 million people or visits. Is it visits or unique visits? Visits, right?
It was, average unique monthly visits.
Average unique
visitors, I believe. Sorry.
Okay, so let's call that 100 million for Homes.com. Let's call Zillow at 220 odd, more or less, right? Even if we put the whole network in, let's call it 140. Okay. The question is, what are they doing on where they're coming from? Okay, which is important. And 2 is, what are they doing on the site? Now, clearly, they're not going to give us the insights from their Google Analytics into where they're coming from or how long they're on the site, because that's part of the secret sauce, and a lot of them don't actually like what that number is. So similar web is the only thing we've got to go by to have a bit of a comparison. So first of all, let's think about where they're coming from, because part of what's behind all of this is the power of the brand. Okay, it's the power of the brand. And remember, Zillow's been building a brand for the last 15 years, probably, more or less.
I think since 2004.
Well, there we go. 20 years. Time does fly when you're having fun. Okay. And Homes.com has poured a lot of money since the Super Bowl earlier this year. So you would expect to see strong direct traffic going to the brand. First point. The second point is how well are they executing an SEO approach, okay, for driving of their traffic, okay, and how does Google think about them as being the authoritative source of information, okay, and the third is how much are they spending on paying to buy traffic, okay, what percentage of their traffic is coming from that. So SimilarWeb at least gives us something to discuss equally about it, their mechanisms. So I've got in front of me the SimilarWeb. I'm going to sort of just talk about it at a high level. Let's start with direct traffic. Direct traffic is a good indicator of the strength of the brand. Roughly 20% of homes.com traffic is direct. 30% of realtor.com traffic is direct, and 40% of Zillow traffic is direct. What that says is that longevity of brand is something that cannot be bought in a heartbeat. It takes a long time to build that brand, that trust in an audience. So then you go, okay, well, how does Google view the world? Who does Google say is the authoritative brand out there, right? Because Google has done a whole bunch of these algorithm updates, which is all about saying, I want to get even closer to who's authoritative. I don't want to have AI generated content. I don't want to have people, republishing, and so on and so on. Okay, and that's affected many portals in terms of traffic, and certainly the Machulas and the Trovits of the world have had their traffic super decreased because at the end of the day, they are vertical search. They're not even the authoritative sources. They're just aggregating the listings. Interestingly enough, Google's saying Realtor.com, okay, which is 60% of Realtor.com's traffic is coming from Google searches, organic, SEO. So what that says is, you've got to follow the maths, of course, and 45% from Zillow. That's because longevity of brand. Remember, Realtor.com is run by the industry. Okay. At the end of the day, yes, it's a joint venture.
Is it really? Okay. Well.
Yeah. The industry has a lot of power in that conversation. I remember seeing that agreement years ago.
Oh yeah, we did talk about the clause in the agreement, didn't we?
Yeah. There's a lot of clauses. So, and then Homes.com is 13% of their traffic is coming from SEO, which means there's potentially a lot of upside if they can execute a great SEO strategy, but it's going to be hard. Now, the interesting one is paid search. What percentage of the traffic is coming from paid search? Realtor.com is 5%. Zillow is 8%. Homes.com, 53%. Which means they're spending a lot of money on SEM to buy AdWords on whatever mechanism. Clearly, it's not just Google, but it's all those sources. So their marketing dollars are being very much sent to buy traffic. Now, that shows that if you go and then look across the REAs and the Rightmoves of the world, they look more like a Zillow. A lot of direct traffic, a high percentage of their traffic, 30-40% of their traffic is direct because of strong brands. Okay, they get a lot of SEO traffic because they've been in the market 20 years. And Google goes, you've been here a long time. You've got people linking to you. You've got a lot of authority.
Surely none of this is a surprise, though. Any new real estate portal coming in trying to establish a brand is never going to compete on SEO terms with the established players. We would expect Homes.com to spend a lot of money on traffic, surely.
Yes, but the question is it sustainable? Can you keep spending at this rate for a long time?
Okay. I have a hypothetical for you regarding traffic and Homes.com. So I wrote an article a few months ago now, basically saying I don't think Homes.com needs to beat Zillow in terms of traffic to beat it in terms of how much money it makes. At the end of the day, CoStar is in this game to make money, not just to say it's number one, right? I think Andy Florence said in Q1 that the average revenue per agent for Homes.com was between $475 and $500 per month, right? By my estimate, if there's 2 million realtors or real estate agents, I should say, in the US market, CoStar and Homes.com only needs to sell to 1 in 8 of them every month to make more money or generate more revenue than what Zillow's residential business did in, I think, in the last quarter that I have records for, right? So my point to you is, does any of this matter? Does the traffic matter? Surely, if you've got a different business model that makes more money per user, the traffic's just a PR game.
Well, the problem is in the US where it's a freemium model, where all the listings are freely available. Okay, you have to demonstrate a return, and one of the issues that companies such as Zillow have had over the years is that agents churn. They come on, they advertise, they promote themselves, and they churn off, and they churn on, and they churn off, and they churn on, and they churn off. You go to the Rightmoves of the world, agents have been consistent customers for 20 years because the listings aren't freely available. But then the question is, can you deliver results? I'm not going to advertise with you if I get nothing in return. That makes no sense. So then I think the other thing that's very important to have a look at, and I think this is where there is a potentially a ray of sunshine in all this, is, once again, I'm going to use SimilarWeb because I got nothing else. Okay, is what do consumers do when they're on the site, and how long do they stay there, and how many pages they look at. Now, what's interesting is the visit duration for Zillow and Realtor.com is pretty similar, around 6 minutes, 5.5 to 6 minutes. On Homes.com, 3 minutes. Okay, which means they're spending about half the time, just under half the time. And the number of pages that are looked at is on Zillow is around 12, and Homes.com is 6. Okay, so yes, you can spend a lot of money buying traffic, but if your bounce rate is higher at 56% versus 42%, and your visit duration is about half, and your pages per visit is about half, it means that the consumers, for whatever reason, aren't valuing the you're not getting as much value out of each visit, that you're spending a lot of money to get to come to the site. So I think the question is, why is that occurring? Now, I don't have the answer, okay, except that you might be buying a lot of low value traffic. And if you're buying low value traffic, that's just vanity metrics.
Yeah, and that kind of leads on to kind of what I want to talk about next, which is the PR battle specifically. So as you might have hinted there, I suspect that some of the traffic is being bought to be able to say they are the number 2 portal. There's also some controversy around a lawsuit that was filed this month. So I'll give you a brief timeline. Earlier this month, on July 19th, Move, which is the parent company of Realtor.com, filed an injunction against CoStar to prevent, I quote, any further unauthorized access to files that Move says were unfairly gained and accelerated Homes.com's growth. Basically, this comes down to Homes.com employed a former Move employee, and they claim that this employee accessed a bunch of files that he shouldn't have had access to, basically. Since then, it's actually gone ahead and filed a lawsuit against CoStar, and there's been a few other developments since then. What I want to know from you, as somebody who has run one of these companies, is would you be using any of these tactics?
Would I be doing it?
Would you be hiring some ex-employee from your rival and allegedly having them look at some documents?
Well, no. Yes and no. Yes, I would hire an ex-employee from a rival, absolutely, because they come with experience and knowledge of the market. And, if they're a great player, let's say they're a really good operator, I get 2 for the price of 1. I improve my team and I downgrade the competitor's team. Okay, it's no different to Mahomes moving from Kansas City to somewhere else, right? They're going to absolutely Kansas City's performance is going to drop, and whoever buys him will go up dramatically. So that's what I would do. However, I would not bring any data that you cannot bring, because you'd be in breach of your employment agreement. But this is not the first time. Okay, this is not the first time that Move.com has sued a competitor. Errol Samuelson used to be the head of what was his role? Head of
Is it industry relations?
No. At
That's what he does now, I
Realtor.com.
think.
No, at Realtor.com.
Mm.
Okay, right. And he moved about a decade ago to Zillow on a big package, and they got sued. Zillow got sued. He got sued, and so on in that process. So exactly the same stuff. So this is out of the playbook. This is, I remember this is owned by News Corp. So none of this surprises me.
Okay, here's another question for you, and it's one that I've not read anything about. It's just something that popped into my head. So supposedly, allegedly, CoStar is trying to get all this data on what Move are doing, right? Now, surely they got all the data they wanted in the process of attempting to buy Move.com back in whenever it was 2022. Surely, if you're, supposedly looking at a $3.5 billion
acquisition
of this company, you would have seen some of its numbers and some of its documents and all the rest of it.
No.
No? So you're saying it didn't get that far, or they didn't?
No. Let me explain how due diligence works when you do these things. Because you're a competitor looking at buying a company, they're going to say, "Here's my customer list." But I'm not going to tell you the names of the customers. I'm not going to really more. I'm just going to create a code against all of them. So I'm going to call them, customer number 1, 2, 3. So all the names disappear. All the contact details disappear. I'm just going to show you numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, right through to customer number 100,000. And I'm going to show you how much they pay and are they on an annual contract or a 3-month contract or a 6-month contract or so on. And that's going to give you confidence. And then when you buy the company, I'll convert the number 1 equals Fred, number 2 equals John, and so on, right? I'll show you how the two match up to each other.
Surely even the anonymized data is pretty useful to a competitor, right?
No? It gives you... you don't really learn a lot about it because I'm not telling you the name, the address, the contact details, which is all what you want, right? Because you want to know that, hey, Ed's a customer and he's happy to pay $1,000 a month. Well, I want to go talk to Ed because I know he's going to pay me $1,000.
Okay,
but I don't know that I don't know who you are. I just know you're number 1, and number 1 equals $1,000.
Call me naive, but it would make sense. I mean, having several, the conversation for CoStar to buy Realtor.com went on for quite a while. I imagine they got to know quite a lot about Realtor.com in that time. Surely that conversation benefits only one side. That only benefits CoStar and Homes.com because they're getting to see, something of their competitor.
You learn so much, having been through, close to probably 100 due diligences and so on over all the years. The questions you ask me tell me a lot about what's of interest to you. And you tend to ask me questions around things that you don't know anything about. So if you're asking me a lot of questions around, how I build out an AVM model, it means you don't really know how to do it. That gives you an example, right? So no, you can learn as much from the questions being asked as you can from the other way around of people answering the questions. And of course, they're not going to answer all the questions. Sorry, commercial in confidence. If you buy the company, we will warrant that the numbers are accurate. We'll warrant that we've got 100,000 customers. We'll warrant that the average customer contract duration is 6 months, 5 months or so on. And we'll warrant that the average amount they spend is X. But I'm not going to tell you individual names, etc. around it. Or what they may have done is you can use an independent third party who is whose job is to verify the data and will say, yes, CoStar, the data is accurate. We can't tell you what's in the data, but we will verify that they're not lying. That's another way in which people do these sort of competitive due diligences.
Okay, fair enough. We'll move on to the sales, the business side of things. I'm actually going to share my screen while I do that because we have some graphs to illustrate what I'm saying. The thing that I'm really interested in with this is that we're talking about CoStar and Homes.com, and Homes.com, and well, in fact, CoStar's whole residential operation is something like 4% of its entire business. So here you can see the CoStar's revenue by segment, and you can see it, residential. It's this tiny little bit in yellow here.
So
All
that's
of the
where
headlines are
I didn't even see it.
all of the headlines we're getting are about this tiny little
Yeah.
part of CoStar's business, which is what, like 4% of its business in
Yep.
total. We're not hearing about, this is CoStar's CoStar Suite, or, multifamily. We're not hearing about it.
No.
Is it maybe a little bit of a distraction for CoStar and CoStar's executive suite and all the rest of it to be worrying so much about this tiny part of their business?
No. I think the another way to view this is, first of all, if you look at these numbers, right, and I'm having a look at Q1 to Q2. If in Q2 that residential section just disappeared, completely just vanished, they would still have the same revenue as Q1, more or less.
Yeah.
Okay. Which basically means that this is overall worth, I don't know what that number works out to be, but it's got to be close to 5% of their total revenues. If that.
It's I think it's 3.9%.
There we go. 4%. So you're 4% of your revenues. However, it's B2C, it's consumers, every person in the United States, who lives somewhere. So it's something that is of interest, and something that, and they all know the Zillow brand. Okay. And therefore it is something that gets picked up and talked about. Now, I think what might be behind all of this, the more I think about it, is I'm not going to necessarily, change the world, whether I beat realtor.com or what, but it gives me something that people around the market are going to talk about. Because what's the most important thing for a listed company is that people know you, they're interested in you, and that they buy your shares. Because the more people who want to buy your shares, the more your share price moves up. The more your share price moves up, the wealthier shareholders become.
That is okay. Yeah, I hadn't thought about that, but it's a good point.
But including internal people who are either paid in shares or have shares already. Okay, and that can be everyone from CEO, board members, and so on. So, and this is the issue that when having been chairman of many listed companies, is that you have to think about your shares as being a product too. Your shares are a product that you want people to buy. The more people who are demanding it, the higher the price goes. If people don't want to buy it, then the price will go down. Very simple. So how do I get people's attention on a CoStar share? Well, we're in commercial real estate. People are going to go, I don't give a shit, because 99.9% of people in the United States or around the world have got nothing to do with commercial. Okay, that's the place I go and work, or that's where I go and go to a restaurant, or I buy food. Okay, so you need to get them interested in something that they can touch and feel. Well, they all live in a house or an apartment. Okay, they all have property. So I think part of what's behind this, in my hypothesis, is how do I get people to know that CoStar exists? Okay, who ever heard of NVIDIA until we had AI plastered across the world, and they went, oh, so by the way, that's all NVIDIA chips. No one knew about NVIDIA unless you're an insider, someone who's in the industry either as an analyst or someone who's a techo who knows all about it. Okay, yeah, because NVIDIA chips are little chips. They're running their computers, and they were great for graphics and games. Now the NVIDIA share price is enormous because, so therefore, I reckon there's part of that game there.
That's okay. That's an interesting point, and definitely something I hadn't thought of. And from the sounds of it, definitely something that I'm going to clip up and use to promote this episode. Moving on, I'm going to quote you some numbers here, and we're going to talk a bit about CoStar's residential growth. So residential revenue at CoStar was 26 million in Q2, which is 106% more than it was in the same period in 2023, and 41% up on Q1. Now, those sound like very good numbers. However, if you read the press about CoStar's Q2 numbers, it will all say revenue growth slows at homes.com, right? Agent member numbers are about 10,000 at homes.com right now. They were 8,000 in Q1, but the growth has slowed down. And all of the investors asking Andy Florence questions on the investor call were all asking about this, right? Now, Andy Florence basically said, and again, CoStar comms people, if you're listening, I am paraphrasing. Please don't get in touch. Basically said this was to do with the fact that in Q1, they had borrowed a load of salespeople from CoStar's other products and had them sell homes.com memberships. And basically, these people have gone back to their regular day jobs. There was another issue that was mentioned as well. I mean, that issue makes sense to me. That seems legit, fair enough. The other thing that they said was that these people were selling memberships of homes.com, obviously, to both types of agents. So agents who do have listings and agents who do not have listings. But that's weird to me because homes.com's business model, as far as I understand it, only really makes sense if you have some listings. Does that strike you as odd as well?
No. And I think at the end of the day, if you're going to push very hard to take on the Zillows of the world, you've got to do whatever you can to get agents to sign up. Okay, whether it's sign up for listing packages or branding packages or whatever it is that they are fundamentally selling. And I think part of the issue, if we take a step further back, because I was having here just have a quick look at the share price, right? Because at the end of the day, what is it that keeps CEOs awake at night? It's the market cap of your company. Okay, and what's interesting is, remember CoStar came out with a bang at the Super Bowl, right? With all this branding for homes.com. Okay, and then you saw basically the share price go from $80 odd up to 95. So it had a really good rise through to April. Okay. And then clearly the results released in April haven't really set the world on light because it's now down at 72, now 77. Sorry. Okay. So you got to start to do whatever you can to keep bringing and growing your revenues. Okay. And keeping your brand at the forefront. Now, the problem is that one thing is to have these headline numbers around traffic. Traffic is great, but traffic does not, the expression don't confuse action with motion. Okay, if we take action as being headline numbers in traffic, etc., motion is movement in revenues and profitability and so on. Okay, now what's built into all these share prices is the market expectation. Now it's a double-edged sword. If you create so much momentum, I'm taking on Zillow, I'm going to do this, the market starts to expect you to deliver an amazing result. But if you don't deliver the results that you build as an expectation to the market, not because you're telling them, but because of your actions, then the market then starts to slam you again. Okay, and I think that's what we've seen a bit of here.
Okay, having been behind the wheel of some of these companies before, what we're seeing essentially is CoStar's bottom line being dragged down by an area of their business, which is 4% of the overall revenue, right? So if you actually look at their profits, it's being dragged down by this little tiny part of their business. My question to you, knowing about this stuff, is how long do investors give it to, show an uptick in profits, I guess?
The answer is not as long as you wish, to put it bluntly. Okay, so what happens in all of these things is that the investors are fickle. They generally are. Okay, so they're going to give you a little bit of time and say, "Come, let's get on with it." But then they start to get impatient. And when they get impatient, they start to go, "Okay, I don't like this now. And maybe this has reached a bit of a peak and it's going to keep going down or whatever." They start to do their own projections forward. and then they start to see through it. So they drink the Kool-Aid, right? They go, "This is fantastic. We love what you're doing. Yeah, we'll ride the rocket ship up." Then if you don't start to deliver the results that they have mentally baked in, they then start to project for going, "Oh, wait a second, this is not right," and so on. So I think the real challenge now for CoStar is to really get that balance right between your front end that you're telling the world is a lot of it's about homes.com. So you got to keep driving that, but make sure that the underlying fundamentals of the business, so the other 96%, is still the rocket ship that's growing forward and growing at a good rate. Now the challenge here, and I've only got in front of me I'm having a look at the quarterly numbers, right? Revenues basically go up at a rate of 5% per quarter, maybe 3 to 4% per quarter overall is what I'm looking at. 600, 604, yeah, maybe even a bit less. So and I don't think homes.com is going to solve that problem. It's very hard to get your 4% of your business to become 10% of your business, 15% of your business. It's very, very hard when you're already delivering total revenues of what's that number? 2.4 billion a year, maybe more or less 2.6 billion a year. You're really putting a lot into homes. So I think homes.com is a good way to get attention. I think it's a good way that I would be less. The more I think about it, I'd be less worried about. Yeah, I'm going to verbally say I'm going to take over the Zillows of the world, etc., because it gets you the headline numbers. But I'd want to make sure I keep running it at a profitable contribution margin to the overall business, so it doesn't drag me down in the process.
Okay, fair enough. We'll move on.
And I don't have to win. Right? I really don't have to win. I don't have to beat Realtor.com. I don't have to beat Zillow. Maybe I get some headline numbers that get in front. Who cares? Right? It gets me the PR. It gets me the people paying attention to me. And now they know what. Wait, so this CoStar's got 2.5 billion in revenues, 2.6 billion revenues, and it's worth 30 billion or whatever the market cap is at the moment. Okay, and it's a pretty cool business. Yeah, I should really be buying the shares in this. 31 billion, 32 billion it's worth at the moment. Okay, and then you're going to start. Then you get some good momentum on the share price, which is at the end of the day is how what the shareholders want.
Okay, we'll move on. We'll move across the Atlantic to the UK, which is another interesting case study. CoStar bought up OnTheMarket from Agents Mutual, and they have been, not as vocal, I would say, as they have been in the US market. They did initially say, we will spend, I think it was $50 million on marketing.
Pounds.
We haven't seen any of that yet. Apparently, we're going to see it around September, which is when ad campaigns usually kick off for portals in the UK. But they did release some numbers this week, which were quite interesting. Average unique monthly visitors or traffic was apparently up 174% year on year in Q2. Pretty impressive if it's right. Listing volumes up 41%. That is, we're going to assume this is true. Pretty impressive. Listings volumes up 41% at a UK portal. Number of advertisers now at around 17,000. Rightmove's, by the way, Rightmove released their numbers today. As we're recording today, and they were 18,785. So supposedly OnTheMarket not too far behind Rightmove in terms of the number of listings and the number of advertisers. In terms of revenue, from what you can kind of gather, triangulating things, it seems to be generating around, this is OnTheMarket, around 10 million in revenue per quarter. By my calculations, doing some triangulation because they don't break it out in their reporting anymore. That's roughly what they were doing before they were bought out. So questions for you. We have yet to see this 50 million in marketing spend. Do you think it's going to make any difference in the UK market?
No. Do you want my long answer or short answer? No.
All right, we'll move on. Yeah, no.
No. I actually don't think it will, because if you think about it, Rightmove, I'm just got in front of me here, Rightmove's free cash flow each year is £260 million. Its EBITDA is £260 million, which is roughly the free cash flow. So that's a pretty strong position to be in. Okay, so its operating cash flow is £200 million, £210 million. So if Rightmove chose to spend a quarter of 1 year's free cash flow, it would be spending the same amount as OnTheMarket. Now, OnTheMarket, as you've just said, is earning 10 to 15 million pounds per quarter. So call it 60 million pounds in revenues. So if you spend 50 odd million pounds on marketing, you're basically spending your whole annual revenue on marketing. Yet Rightmove can spend a quarter of its free cash flow and equal your marketing. And all Rightmove has to do is be a spoiler. Because remember, you want to market to differentiate yourself and to get people to be aware of you. Rightmove has the capacity just to spoil that. Okay, just to, and it probably wouldn't even have to spend 50 million pounds to do it. It just needs to be selective in some markets, probably around London and a few other key places. And it could get, basically, you just, if you think about it, if there's 5 people or two or three people advertising a similar product, it's hard to stick in someone's mind. And Rightmove's already in there, by the way.
On the concept of sticking in people's minds, I want to ask you a question. We saw, I can't remember when it was, if it was earlier this year or late last year, OnTheMarket moved from their offices outside London to some offices inside London. And well, more interestingly than that, they had this big homes.com logo next to a slightly smaller OnTheMarket logo at this new office. Now, it's generated a bit of speculation. People basically saying OnTheMarket is going to change its name to homes.com, which would be odd because in the game of real estate portals, that doesn't really happen. Yep. We don't usually get a name change for very obvious SEO reasons. But I've read it in several places. People speculating that that's going to happen. Can we expect a very rare portal name change here? Maybe because homes.com is a great brand. It's a great website to own.
Great brand for the US. But remember, in the UK, people are used to .co.uk. Okay, and do they own homes.co.uk?
I would say they probably do, but don't know.
Good question, right? Okay, and I don't know. I have no idea. It doesn't really matter. The question is, what was the purpose of that photo? Who is the audience it's playing to? Do you think any consumer in the UK or any agent in the UK cares if the head office of OnTheMarket.co.uk is in Westminster or in Scunthorpe, right? They don't care. What they care is that they're spending their advertising dollars and getting leads in return. And most probably couldn't even tell you where the head office is. I reckon that sort of movement, is a practical one. Get into the middle of London, get access to better quality resources, easier for people to travel to and so on, because, London network, rail networks and transport all tend to hub into the centre of the city. And then second, it plays very well to an investor audience. Now, the investor audience doesn't know OnTheMarket, they know the homes.com. So, of course, you shove a big homes.com brand next to OnTheMarket.
Okay.
And then what you're basically saying is, and we've got a great growth option in the United Kingdom and we're doing really well there.
That's interesting. Again, so we're coming back to the angle of a lot of this is show for investors. It's interesting.
I think part of it is, not a lot, but I think part of it is.
Okay.
Around that.
All right. We've gone through all of the different points that I have on my sheet today. We'll sum up with Simon. Do you think anything's really changed? And can you just reiterate what you see happening on both sides of the Atlantic with homes.com and OnTheMarket? Very briefly.
Yeah, I will. I just want to sort of just take a little bit, just a few more minutes more on the United Kingdom. I do think Zoopla's at risk. Okay. And I think, because I'm looking at the numbers here, and And the gap between Zoopla and I'm going once again similar web. So I know people are going to say, yeah, but it's similar web. And I go, well, it's equally as inaccurate, but relatively probably not that bad. There's 24 million monthly visits to 33. So that's not a big gap. Forget Rightmove, which is 100 plus, right? 5 times the size. The visit duration is 5 minutes versus 6 minutes. Rightmove's at 8 minutes. Pages per visit's interesting. Okay, it's 10 pages per visit for OnTheMarket versus 5.5. Sorry, for Zoopla. It's 18 for Rightmove. I think taking on Rightmove and being Rightmove is just a dream. Okay. But I do think you're going to give Zoopla a good run for its money, and I think that I think is the interesting opportunity there. But even if you move to second, what does that mean? I don't know if it really does much anyway. Especially if if your numbers are correct and the revenues haven't moved that much, but they've got a lot more agents. Well, that means they're giving it away, or it's very cheap, right? There can't be much else in that whole process. So I'm not necessarily convinced. I think if I look at it at a macro level, in the United Kingdom, they're going to throw some money at the problem. I don't think Rightmove has got, they can go back to sleep and just keep making money. I think Zoopla should be worried and be looking over its shoulder and being far more organized and focused on ensuring they don't become number 3. I think that's the first point. The second point, I think in the US, yes, there's going to be a lot of noise, but because it's a different model, it's a freemium model, and it's a whole range of other stuff that's occurring there. I don't really think that Realtor.com has got a lot to worry about, and I certainly wouldn't be worried. Yes, you're going to get I can get traffic above. I'll just buy a lot of traffic. I'll spend money, but am I really going to dislodge? But I have to then keep spending that amount of money, and eventually I'm going to go, wait a second, this is impacting the bottom line, and there'll be something will happen in the future. Don't know when. That requires tightening the belt, and when that does, marketing is the first to go. And when marketing is the first to go, that's going to impact the traffic, and you're going to slip back to number 3. So I'm not convinced on the US what's happening there. I think these lawsuits, etc. That's just part and parcel of business in the US. Get on with it. People are going to sue people. I've got a mate in a totally different in a medical industry who's suing a company in the US for the same concept. Took a person and they came with their data, and to actually have that lawsuit go through to the end, and he's been doing this for 5 years, having his business sue the other guys. It's just part and parcel of business. There are legal firms out there who even fund this. So it's. I'm not too fussed about it. I think at the macro level, you've got CoStar, which is a very good company. Let's not kid ourselves, right? Very good company. It's a $30 billion business, $32 billion business that has to continue to deliver results for shareholders. It has a few little challenges. I'm just looking at this year, share price is down 11% compared to the beginning of January. Okay, overall. Now, they've done a whole bunch of stuff, got a bunch of noise. It went up quite to 96, but it's down to $77 a share, and it started the year at around 85, more or less. Okay, so your business is worth $3 billion less than it was in January. You got to do something. Your revenues are growing at a steady rate, but it's not earth-shattering rate. Okay, so what are you going to do differently? Well, screaming from the rooftops about my commercial business is not the most exciting thing. It's not going to get a whole bunch of retail investors involved, because where's the connection, right? There's no inherent connection to it. But I think talking about the residential market gets a good connection to the product. And when there's a good connection to the product, as people who are consumers of Apple, will attest, right? A lot of people who buy Apple or people who go to Disneyland buy shares in Disney because they have this connection, emotional connection to the underlying share. And I think CoStar is trying to go down the path of doing that. But, if you're, in the last 3 months, CoStar share price is down 15%. You want to track the movements. So, they've got to do something differently.
Okay.
To get the returns for the shareholders. And I think if I'm in Andy Florence's shoes, I would be driving my underlying 93% of my business, or 97% of the business, 96%, as hard as I can. I'd be stripping out some costs and I'd be delivering greater and greater returns to shareholders. And then I would be, clearly I want to have the headline numbers and get some front page news around my taking on Zillow, because it then gets the overall company onto people's radar. And then they're going to look at the underlying numbers and see even better growth than expected, but not really connected to homes.com. Okay. And then away you go. I think, that's probably, I got a hypothesis that there might be something in that underlying strategy, because I've got to move the share price and deliver results for shareholders.
Okay, that's what Simon thinks. If anyone wants to read what I think, it's on the pages of online marketplaces all over the place. My thoughts haven't really changed on it, but let us know what you think. Give us a comment down below. We've had some good comments recently. And while you're at it, why not subscribe to the YouTube channel as well? We just crossed 1,000 subscribers, so thank you for that. Simon, thank you very much. I'm sure we'll be talking about this again at least one more time, because it's not going anywhere.
I think in 3 months we'll talk about it again when they put out their the September numbers, and we'll have a good conversation around what's really happening. We
might even be able to persuade someone from CoStar to come on. We have been trying, I promise.
Yeah, I think it would be great to have them on, and hopefully they'll turn up. And like last year, we had Andy at our Madrid conference, and this year, in the beginning of October, we have our Barcelona conference, and I'm hoping he comes again. And it'll be great to hear how they're progressing in not only the United Kingdom, but also maybe in other parts of Europe by that point in time.
All right. Well, until we talk about them next time, thank you for listening and goodbye.